Nate Olson with us, co-host of the Friday Football Scoreboard show here on this very station you're listening to. Nate, you're a Razorback fan as well. We've been banging the drum on a couple of ideas. Arkansas got screwed. They were then told to like it, but that's really not what lost them the game. Special teams for me is what lost them the game. What says you?
Well, that's true, but I mean that was a terrible call at the end, and I think that we're all going to say it here. The people of Arkansas, the fans. But when you start to look at the national media, other official, people are official experts and people from the NFL and other college football officials, analysts, and they all said they blew the call. And the one guy that I really respect that didn't necessarily say that was Walt Coleman. And on Little Rock Radio, it was tweeted on the Buzz social media that he said that Arkansas was still trying to grab the football. That it was squirting out. Now I don't know. I did. That's not the way I saw it, but it looked like they had the ball. But that last few seconds of that play were awkward because of the whistle and all that. But the bottom line to me on that play is, and officials, I try to give them the benefit of the doubt. If and Phil in baseball, if it's out, safe, play at the plate, and now you've got replay, but. That's a judgment call. If you're there and you see it, you see what you see. Sometimes it's difficult to see it. Sometimes fair and foul and block and charge and all that stuff, goaltending even too. But if you're not in the right place or you're not prepared, and I think what really happened on that play was that they took that play off. They thought it was going to be kneel down, which it was, but they weren't really paying attention, I don't think. And then when the fumble occurred, they didn't really know what to do. And that's shame on them. I mean, you gotta, just like when you play a ball game, you gotta play every snap. When you're official, you gotta officiate. And I don't think they knew what to do. And you see the line judge coming in, waving his arms, kind of trying to stop the play, but the play's still kind of going on. But that confusion in the whistle maybe kept Arkansas from fully grabbing on the ball. But I still think they had it. I mean, the proper call there is Arkansas ball, and I believe this too, guys. If the script was flipped, and it was Arkansas that had that football, Auburn would have recovered and they would have reversed it. Because I really do believe that the better teams, the more traditional teams, they get calls sometimes, and I think you saw a prime example of it right there. I don't think you can tell me any different after watching as many Big 12 and SEC games as I have, as being a fan of both those conferences and covering those conferences. You see it.
So I'm going to put Nate Olson in the conspiracy theory section here on my notebook, and that's fine.
I don't know necessarily conspiracy theory.
I wouldn't be able to convince anybody otherwise right now if they feel all the calls go against Arkansas, because it certainly feels like they do these days.
And I just think that in leagues, and you see it in the pros too, and different players, they get calls. They get the benefit of the doubt. I mean, if Arkansas is ranked at that time and and Auburn's not. I mean, you just see that a lot. I mean, I don't know. They had a chance to replay the call, Phil, and it looked like it was pretty clear cut. And even the Arkansas sideline, they had been given some reason to believe that they were going to get it back. They were celebrating, according to Chuck Barrett. I was listening to the game and watched it again. But I don't think that it's always that that Arkansas doesn't always get the calls. But I think if you're playing a team that's a traditional power like that. That it seems like in some leagues that's the case.
Well, let's get to some high school stuff here. And I went down the list, and it looked like there were 12 canceled games or 12 postponements due to COVID-related issues. And, I hate starting the segment about that, but the numbers continued. It seems to go up. Yeah.
I think there was actually 17 is what we counted.
Wow.
And maybe that was misleading because some of those were made up. Not all those teams were idle, of course, but they were able to make up some games. Yeah, it's a concern. We talk about it every week. I think Rex and I are both fearful for the football players and coaches of this state that week to week you're hanging by a thread, and how long is this thing going to go? And you're hearing talk that the playoffs may not happen, and that's out there from different sources. So if you get through November, the regular season, then maybe it won't be a playoffs. Now, that nothing's been announced, but that's just some of the things that are being said or different sources. So I think if you're a coach, you're trying to play every week and get a game. And I know Buck James, I saw him at the ballpark Wednesday, and he was really frustrated because 2 or 3 different teams said they were going to play him, but then they backed out. And so he was trying Louisiana and surrounding states to get an opponent, and he couldn't do it. So they were idle. Little Rock Central canceled on them with COVID, and this week they play Southwest. They're supposed to. They haven't played a game since week 3, and I'm not confident they're going to play this week. So we'll have to wait and see an announcement on that. But Bryant could be idle again, the number 1 ranked team in the state.
A couple of games I wanted to touch on here that involve schools either in the River Valley or up in Northwest Arkansas. You got Bentonville West and Rogers going to overtime. Bentonville West wins by 3. Fayetteville survives Fort Smith Southside. And Springdale Harbor able to overtake Springdale.
Yeah, a couple of fantastic finishes. Bentonville West, went to overtime, and Rogers, Yahir Munoz, he kicked a field goal in their first possession, but Bentonville West was able to score on Luke Miller's 3-yard run. So they win in overtime, and Rogers led 28-20 in the fourth quarter, but West put together a big drive. They took the kickoff, and then they went 65 yards and scored on a 27-yard touchdown from Carlos Hall. And then the quarterback, Dalton McDonald, this was big. He scored on the 2-point conversion to tie the game. So that's where it stood going into putting it, at the end of regulation, going into overtime, and then West prevails. Big win for them. They're trying to keep pace at that the upper echelon. They're a pretty good football team, trying to kind of turn that corner, and this would have been, I think, kind of a devastating loss. Rogers has been out for 3 weeks with COVID. They played really well in this game. It would not have been a good loss for Bentonville West. They need to win these games, try to keep pace at the top. You were talking about Fayetteville. Who would have thought in October that Fayetteville won their first ball game? They've had COVID issues. They played a terribly tough schedule, non-conference, and they were staring another loss directly in the face. They're down 16 late in the ball game, and quarterback Bladen Fike leads a furious run, throws a couple of touchdown passes, and then ran for one with a go-ahead score. Big time for him. 27 of 46 passing for 365 yards and 4 touchdowns. Threw those back-to-back touchdowns in the fourth quarter to Link Lindsay and Isaiah Centenia. And Centenia had 138 yards receiving. So big win for them. They had to have that to beat any talk that there is playoffs, because they haven't won a game and they've had their games called off. So had to have it. Their back was against the wall, and they came back in the fourth quarter and won the ball game. And in Harbor, they beat Springdale and are able to win that battle of battle of Springdale, and big win for them. They're trying to stay pace too. Bentonville is a clear-cut number 1. We think they haven't really been tested, and so they're sitting there at the top. And you've got several other schools, Harbor, Bentonville West, among others, that are trying to challenge them and maybe still in that second, third, and fourth spot. So good win for them. Always good to win a rivalry game too.
Speaking to Nate Olson here on Halftime. Nate, when you kind of look at what's coming up next week, got some big games that might have some influence on kind of like what the 7A standings are, the 6A standings. Obviously, when you look 7A, Bryant, Bentonville, and North Little Rock all sitting at the top of conference right now, undefeated, all undefeated in conference play and in an overall record. What's some of the bigger games this coming week, this coming Friday?
Well, we talked about Fayetteville. They play Bentonville, and a lot of people will not give them a chance in this ball game. But I like what the momentum that they carry into this game, and that passing game was on fire. So if you can continue that, you're going to have to play almost a perfect game to beat Bentonville. But maybe now you've got your feet under you after COVID issues. It would be a huge win, no doubt about that. And Fayetteville coming into the season, we felt like that they were going to be a contender in the 7A West with Casey Dick and the kind of athletes they have. They have guys on their offense that are big-time Division I prospects. So Centennia being one of those guys, he's electric. So you never know what can happen. Bentonville will go into the people that make the spreads for these games will have them as double-digit favorite for sure. But this is a game to keep an eye on. Fayetteville, if they want to be a player, they need to play well in this ball game. I think Dick will have them ready for it. Bentonville West and Harbury, and we talked about those teams. This is a pivotal game for them because it's playoff seeding for sure. And they're both one of those those teams in that mix with Fayetteville that are trying to fill in, maybe upset of Bentonville, but if not, second, third, or fourth. So big game with playoff implications there. And we haven't talked a lot about Russellville this year, but in the coverage area, they hear your show, and they have had some real big near misses. They lost at Benton, barely a touchdown. They lost Lake Hamilton, and they play Greenwood. And so, again, Greenwood will be a favorite in this, but Russellville is playing very, very good. And, if anybody could have a chance to play with them, you think it might be them based on the fact that they've pushed the other two top teams in this league to the brink. So, had a chance to win both those games. So, big Greenwood rolls along. They haven't really been tested. Chris Young, what he's done is amazing. I think he has Greenwood as not just the top 6A team, but right there, maybe right by Bentonville and North Little Rock behind Bryant as the best. I mean, I think they could play with Bentonville, maybe play with North Little Rock even. I'm that high on them and highly regarded about them is what they've done this year. And then the other game, Mountain Home at Benton, and Mountain Home had a big win this week against Van Buren, and they're a surprise team in the state, I believe. To snap a lengthy losing streak. They snapped a 12-game conference losing streak this week at Van Buren. They have a really high-octane offense, 475 yards of offense, and Bryce McKay, 204 yards. He's a quarterback, 204 yards passing, and 104 yards rushing, 5 touchdowns. He's really, really good. And so Benton has already been pushed a couple of times this year. They're coming off a big win at Parkview, so they are feeling like maybe a little more rejuvenated there, and they're playing better. But that's a game to watch. If they don't play well, Mountain Home could push them.
Out of time, Nate. We appreciate it as always. Thanks for your time, and we'll do it again next week.